So hello, still hot here in Germany, and so great summer. And now let's start with a side topic. So what I managed to do is actually to use standard IRC and to connect with the Ustream chat. It was one of the most asked FAQ, whether I can use actually the Ustream chat, which is built into the page. So you can just join the page and see the other users, and this describes how to do this. Is pretty straightforward actually. So now back to the topics. So what I did the first time, and actually created some abstracts or digest from the actual questions because it was way too long, and I would just switch back and forth between the GitHub gist and my abstracts. So let's start with the first questions, and the questions is actually how to deal or actually the very first one is a little bit of drama. So the last airhack, someone asked me whether it is possible to use JPA without any annotations, just ORM. So I actually wrote a blog post about this. It was pretty straightforward. So what I created a class without any annotations and put all the metadata to an XML. And then if you follow the comments, it's like, you see, it reminds me of Hibernate HBM files, never again. And also get some tweets like, terrible, you cannot use XML. So I actually don't like XML, but this was a question and I answered the question that way. But what you should also know, not all of my blog posts are best practices. This is just, a brief how-to. If you have that problem, you could use this. But I actually never in projects created JPA entities without annotations. I always use annotations and actually only rarely use ORM. And now the question, for what you can use ORM? XML. And what I did in the past a few times, so we have a basic set of entities, and what we had two entity managers, and one relied fully on annotations, and the other one used, in addition to annotations, the XML descriptor. So we could, for instance, read entities from one database and write to another with this trick. But this is not a best practice, it's just a little, how-to if you have the problem. Okay, this was my first remark, not a question. And now to the real one. Theodore has a question, and the problem is, and this is actually an interesting one, that the GlassFish exposes Guava, an older version, to the applications, and I had the same problem. It's actually not GlassFish, I think it's Weld which does this. And this is unusual because what GlassFish usually does, and all the libraries, they are rewriting the packages of the third-party libraries. So usually there is no conflict because what GlassFish would use internally is not like Google Guava rather than org.glassfish.com google.guava, for instance. But I think this one is from Weld, and I guess it cannot happen because probably the license do not allow to modify the binary files, or they just forgot to do this. And the question is how to do this, and I got another answer. It is actually here from MBDBCDK, and he says, okay, we had the same problem and you can fix it here. And this is a setting like CDI service enable implicit CDI false, so you can do this. What you could also try is, GlassFish is basically an OSGI container. You could try to replace the bundle and see whether it works. The problem with that is, of course, if you're using, this is GlassFish 4.1, so there is no paid support. But if you modify the application server, what usually happens is you won't get any support from the vendor. So be careful what you are doing. So this is also a quick answer by an attendee or attendee, to someone who participate in the guest. And I hope you answered it. So my answer would be, if you just try to upgrade GlassFish itself, is a little bit tricky, and see whether it works, and or follow the advice of the other user and check out the debug and the solution list. You can set up the command line interface here. I didn't double check this because it is really hard to test this, but I hope your question is answered. So the next one is recurring one, but I'm glad to answer it. Which application server would you use if you started an app from scratch? And basically, right now, it does not change a lot. So what I use in my current project is lots of Whitefly, surprisingly lots of Payara, and lots of Tommy. And what I'm going to evaluate, or what I'm evaluating a little bit, is the Web Liberty profile. Is like the lightweight IBM. So lightweight is a really pragmatic IBM server with Java 7 support. So what I would choose is any reasonable open source application server with optional commercial support. This would be my advice still, because in more critical projects, probably your clients or customers would like to buy commercial support. So it would be nice to have a server where you can pay for the support. What I, for instance, like more in Payara than in Whitefly is you can download the open source version and then pay for it if you like. And in Whitefly and JBoss is a little bit more complicated, because you can work with Whitefly in your projects, but the JBoss official supported version is a little bit outdated. So this is what I don't like, but this is what I really liked in GlassFish days, and now it almost didn't change. So you can buy the support for instance, from the Payara folks. And by the way, there's another company. You will see an interview on my blog soon. It's called Logikoi, and they also provide commercial support in the US. So I will shortly, you will find the interview on my blog, and they also provide commercial support for GlassFish. So you can actually buy commercial support from wherever you like. Okay, so we answered some questions, and as you can see, we have here a question from Ustreamer: how I can test JPA and EJB cloned your ECB repo, but I can't start the in-memory derby of the application business unit loading exception. This is an interesting one. My ECB repo. So what should work is if you go to your IDE and then search for archetype, you will find the BCE archetype. If you check this out, you will find persistence tests, and they should work out of the box. If they don't, it's something strange with your machine. I don't know, virus scanner which slows down everything or something strange. Try this and you will find the answer inside this archetype. Is like a sample application with lots of how-tos. A little bit best practices, but the application is a little bit over-engineered, because I got lots of those questions and I answered the questions with source code. So it's a little bit over-engineered, but look at the code, it should work out of the box. So thank you for the question from chat. Actually, the first question from the chat for a long time, which is nice. Usually the chat was very lazy. Twitter was a little bit more active. Well, nothing happens here now. So, but chat is nice. Okay. So this was with the question about application servers. The next one is also interesting, about scaling up a war. So come back to my blog. So we covered this. We covered the application server, and now how to scale an application server and with all the side effects. So should we think about not to set up GlassFish clustering? What would be the pros and cons for a cluster independent nodes? So what you get from clustering is what is the killer feature of clustering, I would say, is not necessarily a session replication or a stateful session bin replication. I would say is the how it's called, federate monitoring. So you have one view to the whole cluster, and cluster deployment. So you can deploy an application at once to all nodes. And sometimes what you get is like rolling updates. So you can push the application. This was supported as was an open source plugin for GlassFish. Like you could, open source, yeah, it was provided by French folks. I actually forgot the company name. But you could, in running server, deploy new versions of your applications. So this would be the pros of clusterings. And cons is, I had several times the problem that what is clustering? Clustering is like you have multiple application servers, but they behave like one. So there is, your application is like distributed to all nodes, but it behaves as if they were only one application. And we had the requirement to deploy, I would say, variants of the same war to multiple nodes. And then is where cluster won't help you. It is actually, it makes the whole thing worse. Also, the whole questions of scaling. What usually happens in typical enterprise projects is the database is overloaded and the application server has nothing to do. And I would check first whether adding more servers to the application will improve your scalability. Because usually if you add more, parallelism to the middleware, and your database will slow down the whole system anyway. So, but at recent airhacks, someone explained me that they did lots of XML processing, and this was actually worth of clustering or scaling up. And now the question is, if you don't have clustering, how to scale up or how to deal with this? Usually you could use EHCache or Hazelcast to distribute the IP addresses and names of your RESTful resources. Use Hazelcast or EHCache basically as a registry, and then you can build a very easily a shared nothing architecture. We actually did it several times in my projects. It is far less complicated as you may think. Actually, if you're curious, we also discussed this in the Effective in Architecture Day in Munich. So how to build a simple but distributed and persistent request counter in J2EE with solid performance. Let's say some data loss is acceptable. You know where the answer is. Look at how it's called, sequences in JPA. This is actually a very robust way for counting stuff. This is like, counter. You get the key, which is counted, and how JPA operates is it checks out a number from a table once and tries to increase that 1,000 times in memory, for instance. So what you could do is, if you have 4 nodes, you can check it out 4 times, and then you will get different numbers from different nodes, and some data loss would be acceptable. Otherwise, what you will have to do, another option would be that one node acts as a master and just counts, and all other nodes are like slaves, and they just wait until the master dies, and they will vote another master. And some of the logic is already built in frameworks like Hazelcast, for instance, and application servers had always proprietary means to do this. Like, for instance, I think JBoss, it was called HA singleton. So it was like singleton which was pinned to one node. And by the way, BAWLS WebLogic server, they had actually, I think it was called pinned objects. It's like objects which were pinned to a certain node. So the question is now how accurate the counter has to be. And this was, and I think shared nothing architecture, what you could do, you can dedicate, one node to counting, and the node just counts. It would be not a problem. If it dies, another node would wake up and just count. So this would be acceptable. So another question is, I hope it is answered. So I will just, we have one question at Twitter. And I got an hint from Marek, and he says, Web Solidity profile from IBM with the heap smaller than 2 gigs is free. If it's larger than 2 gigs, you will have to pay for it. Now the question to Marek, I know Marek, I think he works for IBM even. The question is it the same piece of code? So can I download an OWLP and use it for free and then just pay for it, or will I have to re-download something else? This is always, a little bit painful if you have multiple versions of commercial and open source software. So let's see. How How to automate the white file configurations like data source MQs while deploying application production. So actually this is a nice one. So what you can do, you can generate the XML, which is a little bit ugly. What you can always do, use the jboss-cli.jar is a remote REST interface. There are different options. If you're using, for instance, Docker, what you could do, you can just, if you build the image, just start JBoss, fire up the CLI and then shut it down, and then you have your image. Or what I sometimes do, I just modify the, I think, how it's called, JBoss XML, the XML configuration file, and put it to Docker. This is actually what I do, or we do in productions. So with something like Whitefly, it actually does not matter what you are doing, because all the changes are encapsulated in the image anyway. Okay, perfect. So now the questions about Apache Kafka. So what Apache Kafka is like highly scalable file-based MQ messaging system. It would be perfectly suitable to communicate between wars, years, or whatever. And the question, are there better options for a stream centering or central pipeline architecture? Actually, you can use Hazelcast again for something similar, because it is actually hash map with events or queue with events. Is very similar to GMS. So I would say what to choose, it really depends how many nodes are running. So if you have multiple nodes up, you could use something in memory. If not, then you have to use something persistent like Kafka. So the question is, does it have to be like, persistence messages? So then I wouldn't use something in memory. You have to commit the data to disk. And before I would evaluate Kafka, I would rather look at GMS. It comes with the application servers already built in. So why not to use GMS? And most of the application server, for instance, the Hornet queue in Whitefly is great. The GlassFish implementation is also not that bad. And I forgot what the Apache one is from Tommy. They are also actually, what is it called? Is it not Sonic MQ? Something similar at Apache. So actually all GMS providers are great, and you get the persistence for free. So I would evaluate the GMS first. Then if you don't like GMS, look at something like Jcache, and particularly EHCache, for instance, or Hazelcast. Still not happy, then look at Kafka. But Kafka has specific requirements if you have to write a huge amount of data, which has to be persistent. This would be the question, actually. So let's see what happened in the chat or Twitter. Nothing here. Okay, the next one. What is my preferred database? This is actually a nice one. For testing, I like Derby because it comes with JDK and is pretty mighty actually. So it is and robust. We actually use it also in production in a view systems with several gigs of heap of table space. Works really great. Hypersonic or H2 are faster, but the SQL support is not that great as in Derby. This would be the pure Java databases, which are always preferred because it's very easy to install. Of course, Oracle is everywhere. So Oracle is like, the quasi-standard Oracle database. What Oracle also has is interesting. I think it's called KV Store. It's like BerkeleyDB with... yes. It's interesting one, and you can pay for it or not. It really depends which versions are you using. So we just put it to a chat. So this is interesting one, and from NoSQL, this is really hard to say because there are different kinds of databases. But Cassandra for column-based or document-oriented storage. Elasticsearch if you need full text search, for instance, also nice. And the how it's called, the graph database Neo4j is also interested one if you're more interested in graphs. So this is what I used But preferred, what I did, for instance, in my blog, I removed the database entirely and replaced the database with in-memory cache, JCache. Actually, look at the project headlands. It was the Hazelcast and Java 8 streams and lambdas for the queries. So there is no database at all. So yeah. And I think Postgres is getting momentum, so I will prefer Postgres over MySQL. So this would be actually my preference to databases. Yeah, usually I don't have too much preference because I have to use what the clients have. And on my server, I try to avoid databases because of the backup problems. So I will have to maintain it somehow. So if possible, I try to keep the data in memory, which does not matter, like the statistics of my blogs, for instance. So if you are careful, watch the statistics from time to time. They're counting from 0, 1, and this is usually when I upgrade Hazelcast or reboot the server or something like this. If I think in autumn or winter, if there is a little bit more quiet, I will persist the statistic data somewhere to a flat file or whatever. But right now, everything is in memory. Okay. So back to the questions. So this is the answer to the question we already covered, and now we are in number 7, threading in Java EE, and what about akka? So there's and the question is, in general, it is well known to avoid it if you can. So, and if you need threading, what sources to read. This Java concurrency in practice is actually a great read from Brian Götz. It's used on Java 6, but there is a lot difference in Java 8, except it's a little bit leaner. And what is my opinion about akka? And I don't know whether this threading is that hard. So I think threading is very hard if you would try to implement, standalone Java applications like Swing or JavaFX. So there's lots of threads and everything hits one singleton or something like this. This could be hard. On the application server, if you're a little bit careful and if you're not using static and singletons, and instead you are rely on EJBs or request scoped, what actually happens, so the whole state is created for one request and then disappears after commit. So then it's pretty easy. So if you just try not to use threads in Java EE, just rely on the application server, it becomes extremely easy. So instead of starting the thread, you could, for instance, use asynchronous in Java 6. In Java 7, you can even try to use how it's called, the Java EE concurrency utilities. And what I also did, I implemented a little framework, Porcupine, which makes this more easy. I think threading is not that hard. What is a little bit harder is if you do something in asynchronous way, how to notify the user, because usually the application server does something else in that time. So what I consistently saw in many task forces and projects I reviewed was if the developer started to use threads, there was actually no reason. There are just a few reasons for this. And they used threads and then actually forgot about this, and they have some singletons in other places, and everything became inconsistent, or they got a deadlock. And if we removed the whole threading altogether and relied on application server, everything worked better than expected. So what is my opinion about akka.io? akka.io and someone else asked about Vertex. Both are great. To tell you a story, I think it was many years ago, and it was a JAX conference in Frankfurt. It was in Frankfurt, not in Mainz. So I think it was at least six years ago, and this was a very early days of Scala. And actually, even Martin Oderski joined the show and explains Scala for the very first time. And I listened to this, and it's really great. If Java EE, if we get problems with scalability or messaging or threads with Java EE, I will immediately switch to Scala because yeah, then I get, you know, the native support of all the messaging, all the stuff. And we had actually a long chat with Martin at Frankfurt back then. And funny enough, no one was interested in functional programming back then. This was like, you know, like a strange, like an alien show with functional programming. I remember Martin had also, you know, a yellow shirt with, and this was somehow associated with the hotspot compiler because, or generics, because Martin Oderski was also one of the creators of the. I think he contributed to the JVM or something like this. And the same feeling I have with Akka. So I would use Akka if I would have the problem. So the problem with me is I spend my time in usual enterprise projects. They are interesting, but they are not chat applications. They are not Ustream. They are not Twitter. There is not Periscope, and there is no Facebook. So if I would create Twitter from scratch, I would probably use something like Akka, Scala, or whatever. Actually, Twitter is based on Scala. In my projects, I would say it looks like I always use Java E7 right now, or sometimes Java E6. And if you would look at the code for my commercial applications, you will find only, you know, 99% POJOs and a Vue Java E annotations, and this basically is. So as simple as possible. So my opinion of Akka is great, but I don't have the problems. Now, if I would have the problems, I would consider Akka, Vertex, and before I would consider both, I would just look at JMS with Java 8 and see whether something like Hornet or just, you know, JMS providers would solve my problem, or Hazelcast. So if you are looking for a vacations, opportunity to hack something, go with Akka. But in using in a projects, it could be a mess, because if you start with Akka, another developer will ask, and why not, you know, Vertex? And the other will say, okay, if you have already Vertex, why not Scala at all and drop Java? And the other one will say, oh, Clojure would be great. So if I stick with the standard like Java and Java E, I can reduce the amount of meetings and just concentrate or focus on the domain or business logic, and not talk about fancy frameworks. But yeah, still Akka is great. And what Akka is a like actor model. Is like, you know, object instances are exchanging messages, and it is similar to GMS. So each object is, I think, is called inbox. It's like a queue which queues up the messages and receives it in a single-threaded way, with a nice error recovery, and with built-in switch case statement is called pattern matching. So yeah, this is I like the concepts. I'm still waiting for the problem in my projects, not you know, Twitters or Facebooks or Netflix, but in my projects. Okay, so a second here. So nothing, no updates, and we have something here. Oh, another, I just missed a question. Is enough for a virtual private server with 1 GB RAM, 1 CPU and 30 GB to use Payara's application server? GSF, EGB and JPA, 1 gig of RAM. It could be. The question is, I have no idea how much MySQL will take. But the out-of-the-box configuration from Payara was 512 RAM, and I think in the recent they increased it to 1 GB RAM, and I will check out on my server, but I'm pretty sure all my processes are running, like my blog and everything, way under 1 gig. I associated the application servers properly 4 gigs, just because I have plenty of RAM, but everything should run nicely with. I think 2 gigs would be nicer, but with 1 gig it should run. I have no idea about MySQL server, but Payara should work nicely with 1 GB of RAM. And it's always the question, though, how many entities are you going to cache? Are you using the cache at all? So, but if you are in a reasonable architecture, it should be more than enough. And of course, if you have JSF, probably if you do nothing, a session can consume up to 5 meg per user, You can reduce this if you play a little bit with the configuration. So, you know, if you have 200 users, you will consume the 1 GB of RAM. So probably if you have lots of users, GSF may become a problem. Yeah, okay. So it was a little bit fluffy answer, but the question is, you know, GSF, if it's a Twitter, you get a problem. If it's a, your own, I don't know, Hello World application, it will be more than enough. Okay. Also a nice one. Oh, I forgot actually. No, Twitter, nothing on Twitter. So next one. So we covered now the threading, and now is something interesting. 50 megs of, is it worth to migrate to a Java E server if someone uses, has 50 megs of war in Tomcat? So someone asked me, is it, it's always better to have the smallest war possible. Mine is about 50 megs right now, mainly because a lot of third-party jars from Common Libs. And he uses Tomcat with JPA and, or she or he, Tomcat JPA and WebSockets. And is it worth the real JE application server like GlassFish or then Payara, Whitefly, and whatever? There's an interesting one, because if everything works in your case, I would just keep it that way. But what I don't like long POMs, and I don't like small deployments. Of 50 megs, I think it is still would be okay because it's not a huge. But if you're interested in this, go to my YouTube channel. What I did, I was just curious. I created a small screencasts. This is the last one, Thin Wars, Java 7 and productivity. So I created one skinny war and one war with 200 megs with just drop JDK in there and show the difference. So it makes a difference. 50 megs it will be significantly smaller, but I really like skinny wars. So it is really the speed and the simplicity is what I really prefer. But this is a religious question. Do you prefer, you know, to have nothing on your Tomcat or Jetty and put everything in your war? And I like the reverse. So I would just put, you know, just use Java 7 or Java 6 and forget about the dependencies, runtime dependencies, and focus on business logic. So in this particular case, I would migrate. So let's put it this way. If you would hand over the application to me and I will have to maintain it, I will migrate this if I had the chance. But if you build the application, you're maintaining this and you know the code and it works, I would not migrate this because there is no point. I think so far, I would ask you, you know, how slow is the deployment? So this would be my question. And if you migrate to GlassFish or Payara or whatever, probably the code gets simpler. So this is what you get for free. Okay. I hope is somehow answered. So is it a good idea to combine Entity Listener and WebSocket to implement notification? So this is funny because it seems like, you know, as either telepathy or you hacked my machines and know what I'm doing, because I had this problem recently in a project. And what happened here, I created in a sample app. So I'm working on the new version of the workshop for Parlays, well, you know, the version part. So if you go to Parlays, there are some more courses, and you see the Java E Bootstrap is right after Scala, so it's quite popular. So thank you for this. And I'm creating the effective Java 7 is the second part with a simple app. It's almost done. And what I did in the simple app, it actually does exactly the same. So what I did here is I implemented an entity with listener. And the listener fires an event, and the event is received by a boundary, and the boundary distributes the event via WebSockets. So this is exactly what I implemented. It works actually. And so the answer is from the question, yes, you can absolutely do this. But it seems like he gets a cyclic dependency. And I don't get the dependency because I'm using the events. This is what breaks the dependency probably. And yeah, you can use API, WebSocket, entity events, and multiple events. Is always the question who receives the events. Is it a particular user, or you have multiple channels? Is more logical or business questions. But we can absolutely do this, and we did it several times. And funny enough, in the current projects we are using JavaFX, and we use Hazelcast again to do the same. So we are using Hazelcast on the server, and the clients use Hazelcast on the client, and they are notified proactively about all the changes with, I think it's called Cache Entry Listener, and something similar as in Hazelcast. There is a listener concept. But in a more traditional application where you have HTML5 applications, you can absolutely use WebSockets or long polling for this. I implemented this already several times, even on stage and conferences, and I think I also recorded a screencasts. If not, just ping me, I will record one with long polling or WebSockets. So let's double check. So there is nothing here, nothing here. So this chat is way lazier than the Ustream chat, interestingly. It's also more active. So we have already 20 live users, which is really nice. And there is about the WLP free license. So I will just copy it to the chat. So we'll see actually what it is. I said this chat is lazy, and Jaren said thanks. So this is the license. The only question is, if you buy the support, whether you can stick with your jars without any modification. So oh, just forgot the so how to structure GSF code, ECB. So I don't use entity control boundary for GSF usually, because if you have only a view GSF pages, which is usually more and more true these days, you will get way more components on the backend. So what I usually do, I have a clear separation between the presentation and business. So I have two packages, business and presentation. The business comprises the components with ECB, and in the presentation I just have GSF pages. Sorry, not GSF pages, rather than the model classes. And the model classes just single classes. And if you get more than this, I would think about introducing something similar as the backend. You can even use ECB pattern for this, but it was not necessary so far. So the common observation is you get end-to-end relation between front-end component and back-end component. I never managed to implement like a silo, a component from the presentation to business. It was always like end-to-end. So, how to conform to Weiss law of rules using GSF? Can we use some CDI interceptor magic here? So the question is, I don't see the relation. So the CDI interceptor is actually backend injection, and GSF is the page generation, and Weiss law is like is a plugin. I think Firefox plugin. You get similar functionality with Chrome, and it will show you why your application is slow. This is the name. So you don't need to go through all the rules. I just want to know the basics. So for example, expire setters tagging the images, just CSS files timestamps. How to go about this? So you cannot answer the question in general. If you use GSF, you have to make a difference whether you're using something like prime faces or rich faces. Then the component providers are actually responsible to create whatever needed for CSS and JS files. And what you can do equally well, create HTML5 friendly markup, and then you will be entirely responsible what GSF generates. Also, you don't even have, to use the resource head reference to serve your JS and CSS files via the Faces servlet. You can just use direct reference from whatever you like, even from CDN. So it is not needed. So I guess the problem you have, you are using probably a third-party component provider, which causes you some trouble with the speed. And now the question is how to optimize this. And you will have to look at the documentation of the component provider because it's out of scope of JSF. You have to run JSF in production mode. This would be the first thing to do, because if you're running in development mode, nothing gets minified. And yeah, and what you can even do, I think it's called page speed from Google, is like web server plugin which optimizes everything after the I think it's called Google page speed. So if you install this, it's like Apache plugin. Yeah, a page speed module, exactly. There was to Nginx and Apache, and then it will try to fix it after the fact. So this would be the easiest possible thing, because there will be nothing to do for you. So I would check this first. And surprisingly, many of the startups I work with right now are using JSF, usually Primeface, and are very happy about the performance and everything. So it really depends, you know, what you expect from this. Of course, a single page application on the client side without lots of templates and dynamic behavior will be almost orders of magnitude faster than JSF, of course. But JSF have comparable performance to like frameworks like Wicked, and what I think even they should outperform Ruby on Rails applications, for instance. So someone she or he a Hochleitner asked me, in previous days I could use GlassFish in production without cost, but I could decide to pay for a production license too. So this was perfect. And today with Whitefly, it's the same situation. Not quite the same, because you cannot pay for Whitefly. You have to migrate to AAP, and they have a slightly older bits. Yeah, exactly. This is correct. This is my understanding, but you should, you know, ask the Red Hat guys. And this is what I don't like in Whitefly. This is my main criticism, but it is like it is. You cannot change this. So in Tommy, it's not this similar situation. So my understanding of Tommy is you get the support from Tommy right away, and Payara is the same. So you can, or Logical, you can download GlassFish and get support without do anything. And WebSphere Liberty Profile should be the same. So I don't think you know, you have to look at the IBM page, but I think if you download the bits and just using under the 2 gigs and then would like to pay for it, you can just keep the bits on your disk and just pay for it. You don't have to replace it with anything else. So yeah. So now I got the response from Marek, and I think Marek, I know Marek, he works for IBM and says the code base is the same. So IBM is reasonable. So you can just, you know, download the bits once and then to decide whether you would like to pay or not if you're under 2 gigs. And to answer the question from Ustreamer 5412, you forgot the Vertex question, and the answer is I also like Vertex. This is a really nice concept. You get the same answer for me as Akka. I'm still waiting for the urgent problem in my projects. I would ask a counter question to you: what you are building. Why you cannot use stock Java? Is this too slow, for instance? If yes, then you get probably a more specific question or answer from me, because still. I'm not using Java EE because of scalability or whatever. I use Java EE because of simplicity, and this is the main reason. So the question is, if you can, just write what you would like to implement. Then you get more specific. If you're a telco company, you can go with Akka. a vertex, but then I will also ask, Erlang would be also nice, So then we answer now the question from WebSphere. It means I tested this is really nice, fast, and you can buy support from IBM, or you have to if you exceed the 2 gig of RAM. And and the next one is with Docker in mind. So the question here is basically, are the Java EE application server Dockerized enough? And what I'm using, if you go to my blog runs in Docker on Tommy for historical reasons. So the Tommy runs in Docker entirely. Then we can just go to my, so the content here runs on Tommy. This content runs on Whitefly with Hazelcast, and I have also one Payara node on Hazelcast just for fun to test everything. And all these servers are Dockerized without any problems, and the Dockerization is very similar. And I don't have a node with WebSphere Liberty profile, and I think the WebSphere Liberty profile would be a little bit harder to install. As I remember, if you install WLP, you will have to answer, yes or no, a question, and then it is installed. So there would be 1 or 2 lines more in a Docker to just automatically answer the yes question, the license question. But I might be wrong. I remember if you install WLP, there's like an interactive text-based installer, and you have to say yes. I have to say I never had an issue with application servers in Docker, and I used Docker for a long time. I think I started with 0.4. It was very early on my server. Okay. So Adam, would you recommend Java EE for a web mobile application? So I mean, what we the question is, would I recommend Java for mobile application? For me, it's a perfect fit. So what mobile would mean for me is you will expose to REST services with WebSockets probably. And this is Java is just perfect for this. Is what I do actually all the time. And all applications are mobile if you think about this. And at least in the US, more than 50% of the user base is actually mobile users. And the mobile clients have almost the same capabilities as desktop. So in my eyes, Java EE is great for this. And in my projects, we're using Java EE exactly for this. Not only for this, it also interacts in one project with IoT devices, like embedded devices. It's just perfect. And perfect means simple to use. Oh, and Marek also did something. He says, he wrote me another URI. I will drop it into chat. I don't even know what it is. Hopefully it's not, a virus. Now we have it. Here it is. Running WebSphere Liberty profile in a Docker container. So for the activity, Marek, you will get an official airhacks mug or t-shirt at the next conference. So I will put it here and here. So you can run WLP directly in the container. So, and this is a little bit harder to answer, because if the application comprises 10 years and worse, I would put it on different containers. So like the microservice, yes, so you would get 10 Docker containers, each containing one application server, and they communicate. This would be even buzzword compatible. It would be the microservice architecture. And how to implement this first? I would put all the wars on one application server first, make it run, and then use multiple Docker containers. I'm actually wrong. What I would do first, I would ask you why you have 10 years and not one. And if it's possible, I will just merge all the 10 years to one war and then deploy it on one instance to an application server of your choice, whatever you considering it is great. Whitefly, Tommy, Payara, GlassFish, or Payara is a pitched GlassFish, or WLP, and then it would be the best possible choice. And you will have to have good reasons, or good arguments to introduce 10 wars if I were in charge of the architecture in your project. So one war, in my eyes, is always better if you can achieve this. Okay, so see what happens here. If not, we done. We were fast and active. So the first time the chat was really active, I think it was a good idea to include the Ustream chat. So it is lots of activity here. Thanks, Marek. You get mug or T-shirt for support from the IBM side. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you almost in autumn. I think it is in September is the next time. And I will create the next gist. If some questions are left, just write them down. And thank you for the activity. I also enjoyed this show somehow. I don't know. Always the first Monday of the month, and I learn a lot, and I save lots of time because I don't have to answer emails anymore, which is a really great feeling. So inbox zero does not matter anymore. So at least not for airhacks. So thank you for watching, and see you next time. And oh, I forgot a very important things to me. One of the FAQ still, the next airhacks are in December, and one microservices slot in January. It is late, I know. I got lots of requests to do it this year, but I'm too busy with my real projects. So this is what I only can do. And by the way, what's new is JavaScript for Java developers is with what I actually plan to do is to explain the JavaScript as I explain Java the same way as a Bootstrap. So actually to understand what's going on, and the problems, types, and scopes, and all this stuff. And then of course I will cover NAS one, and at the end explain Angular 1.0, a little bit source code, what actually happens, and try to implement a simple dependency injection with JavaScript. So this is my personal goal, because I got lots of questions about JavaScript. So there's going to be more stuff in HTML5, because I covered HTML5 in JavaScript one workshop, and this was way too much stuff. So thank you for watching, and now see you in September. Bye.